I'm Kevin Coleman with the Saddle Post, and I am at Veterans Memorial Park, and I'm speaking with a couple proponents of expanding this and adding to it and building a military tribute museum. So could you please introduce yourselves?
My name is Melody Lapzynski Hatfield, and I am one of the initial people that was involved in the idea of putting a military museum back behind us, which we'll talk about a little bit further later.
And I'm Bob Leach, and I have the role of being the treasurer of the organization to create this military museum. Melody is the president, and it is an organization that's been established, 501c3, for the Chillicothe-Ross Military Tribute Museum. And that will be located behind us in the area that's currently occupied by the City of Chillicothe Parks Service Commission. And we are happy that the idea may present itself to take over this building behind us and add to the Veterans Memorial Park. One of the highlights of this museum will be it can explain the story of every name that's engraved on the monuments here in the Veterans Memorial Park. But it can also be so much more. It can also be a museum that will honor all of the military contributions that have been made by the citizens of Chillicothe and Ross County, basically since our founding in 1796, when a number of Revolutionary War veterans were the first settlers in this area.
And both of you are quite familiar with veterans and local military history.
Yes, indeed, and that's why we're able to use this not only to highlight the stories of each of the names that are engraved on monuments here, but also to tell about what has been done by our citizens throughout all the nation's wars.
Not even just the locals or the military. We also plan on doing rooms where we will have discussions on the different wars and then tie that into the people from Ross County and Chillicothe. And for those of you who might not be aware of it, we were thinking about making it a totally interactive exhibit so that, like Bob was saying, we have something like a QR code or something similar to that so that people could go in and they could hit a button or scan and they would be able to find out the history of our people. And because of its proximity, right over there you've got the school, and there are several other schools in Chillicothe-Ross that would have an extra benefit of knowledge that they would be able to gain from the museum that we plan on putting in. And we have been working diligently on this for about a year now, and as the prospect looms of the water department actually moving over to Eastern Avenue, we have continued to pursue this behind the scenes until we can hopefully get a lease on this property equivalent to what the pump house did, so that we would be able to get a long-term lease from the city, well, through CIC, so that we can obtain the project. We are in the process now of looking at different grants that are available to us. However, right now we're kind of in a holding pattern until we actually have gotten the lease or the approval. I'm sorry, it would actually be the approval for the lease from Chillicothe.
The building is exciting enough. It's got some interior rooms that would be a traditional museum with artifacts and things like that in it, but it also has some bays that have held water trucks and things like that over the years, and we see that those could be used for some military vehicles we might be able to obtain. Smaller things, Jeeps, World War II bomb racks, things like that. And so there's a lot of possibilities with what the existing structure can be used for, as far as highlighting what our military veterans and other people who served on active duty throughout the nation's history have performed for us.
And actually too, as we're standing here looking at this park, we parked on the street and we took basically the available spots, a lot of the available spots, so that we would be able to park here, which has been something that has been problematic for people that want to come down to the Veterans Memorial Park, because there is not parking. It's limited to what you're seeing over here, or else you have to park across the street and then walk across Yaptangi Park. once we get the military museum up and running, we will have access to a fairly decent size parking lot over there that people will be able to use when they come in, and they will be able to use that for both the museum and the park.
We're very happy in the veterans community with this idea. There's been some feelings in the veterans community since this park was established. We are delighted to have it and think it's a showpiece for the city. But some veterans feel like we've been kind of pushed to the side. The main focus of Chillicothe is over at the corner of Water Street and Pate Street, and then down toward the courthouse. And this is off to the side and not very recognizable, and again, not very accessible. Having this military tribute museum right behind where we're standing now will rectify that and make it a real centerpiece for the community. I also want to talk about how we're tied into other historical organizations in the area. The Ross County Historical Society being one of those.
Yes, it is. Darren Baker over at the Historical Society has been absolutely wonderful. He has been willing to give us any assistance that we need with this project. And I want to say that it's not just things of that nature. You've got to also think about the fact that, okay, Chillicothe, we've got the World Heritage designation now. We've got the Adina Mansion. We've got the Lucy Webb Hayes House. We've got the Mace House up at the Veterans area. There is the Adina Garden and Mansions. And there's other avenues like this that could be a destination for people coming into Chillicothe, because they can take a moment, they can hit this, they can hit the Mace House, then they can go to Adina, they can go to the Historical Society. If somebody is interested in museums or history, then this will be yet another stopping point for Chillicothe to bring people in addition to everything else that we have to offer.
And all of the things that Melody just mentioned have connections to our military history.
Yeah.
Of course, Thomas Worthington was a general in the militia during the War of 1812. When we get to the First World War, of course, we had Camp Sherman right here, and some of the soldiers who are on the World War I monument trained at Camp Sherman, and some even passed away at Camp Sherman during the flu epidemic. Also, we have the other connections with the soldiers who were killed during World War II. The biggest event that happened in this location in the last 2 years was the homecoming funeral for Joseph Hoffman, our first casualty from Ross County who was killed at Pearl Harbor. His remains were finally identified and brought back to Southern Ohio for burial, and a large part of his funeral was held right here at the Veterans Park in front of the monument that has his name on it. We mentioned the Lucy House. Webb Cook Hayes is Lucy's son. He was a Medal of Honor winner, and his name is engraved on the Medal of Honor monument in this park. So this truly is a central location to tie all of those things to the military history of Chillicothe and Ross County.
And it's not just history going back decades or a century or whatever. We also plan on doing a Global War on Terror monument that we're going to put right over here, and Bob can talk about that more.
Hey, Chillicothe and Ross County had 4 of our young men killed during the Global War on Terror, and that was Gavin Colburn, Aaron Reed, Brad Clemens, and Josh Geyer.
Members of the Lima Company?
Yeah, Lima Company of the United States Marines was the unit that Aaron Reed was in. So that monument will be located here, commemorating those 4. The plans and fundraising have been going on for that some time. We look at the dedication of that monument to happen later this year. And that will be the monument that is kind of on the direct line between the World War II monument and the Chillicothe-Ross Military Tribute Museum. Right.
But it would offset, just like this monument over there, there would be another sidewalk radiating out over this direction, and then there would be a series of bricks over, like we have over there, that would be going over there, and then it's not going to be a monument per se. It's going to be a little bit more of a free-flowing design.
Reflecting area with the Soldier's Cross that people know that's the boots with the rifle and the helmet on the top. There'll be a historical representation of that with the names of the 4 individuals who lost their lives in the global war on terrorism.
And each monument here does have its own individual character.
Exactly.
Absolutely.
And we've worked very hard to keep it that way. One of the initial goals of this park was that it is truly a Veterans Memorial Park and not to look like it resembles a graveyard with all the monuments being similar in nature. So each monument has a distinctive shape, and those are always somewhat representative of the conflict that they are commemorating.
Now, there have been a few events here with some good-sized crowds, but it is a little off the beaten path.
Yes,
It
and
is, but
this will hopefully change that as the museum itself becomes a destination. People can park, visit the museum, and then come into this area.
because you've got to imagine that all of this fence would come down, and all of the vehicles and things that are necessary for the water department to do its function will be out of there, and it will be a free-flowing area from down there all the way to Park Street on that end. And when you're talking about events that have been held here, like, I can only speak with some authority as to the Purple Heart. When we did the Purple Heart Monument, we had over 200 people here in that small area down on that end of the park. And can you imagine parking for 200 people the way it is right now? A lot of people were over there. They were walking across Yaptanji, and I'm sure...
And poaching at the YMCA.
And poaching at the YMCA or wherever they had the ability to park. But there were a lot of people, over 200 people, and something like having this access to have been able to park would have been a wonderful thing. And when we have events like we had with the Purple Heart, people could then move around the park and then proceed to go on down and go into the museum. And we believe that it would be a wonderful asset to this area. I mean, it can do so much to help inspire people and to let them understand the sacrifices that our people, our soldiers, have made over the years. And we can do that both by having the museum there and these monuments that you see with names in some cases, or just the history of others.
And the city is working with you. They just have...
We have been talking to the city. We have been working with them, and we've made a formal request to the city to obtain the property as part of a lease, a long-term lease. And right now we're just hammering out the details on how that's going to happen.
All right, let's go over and take a look at the building and parking lot itself. This was built for the Chillicothe Gas, Light and Water Company, which was originally mainly a gas company. They made gas from coal, and then they got the contract to supply municipal water in 1881. And this is an 1890s addition to their facility, and the last remaining historical part on this property. And there are plans to turn that into the Chillicothe-Ross Military Tribute Museum.
Yes. Okay. What we wanted to do by coming over to this side is we wanted to show you all a view of the distinction of what it currently is and what it will look like when we get the museum. Right now, the Water Services Department is housed in this building, and I need to correct myself. They will be moving over to the old Pepsi building, which is on 7th Street at some point in time in the future, hopefully the near future, so that all of the services can be moved under one roof. And when they do and they vacate this property, that is when we have every intention and hope of being able to start renovation on this building. As you can see, right now, it's a very busy area. There are a lot of vehicles here, all of which are required for their needs as part of the Water Services Department.
It's definitely a working service facility.
It is a working services, and they keep busy. They've got a really good crew over here, and they do their jobs. But just use your imagination a little bit, because what we envision is having this building completely renovated, having all the brickwork done and everything, and being able to expand it, opening up the windows so that it'll be a much more welcoming environment. And then in addition to that, envision that those trucks aren't there and the fence behind it isn't there, and that gives you a clear view from this area all the way down to the total end of the park on that direction.
Those were the spruce trees that you were standing in front of.
Yes, yes. Yeah, because that's right on the other side of that fence. So what we envision doing is having this be one wide open space that I think will be turned into a beautiful, beautiful asset for Chillicothe and for our veterans.
And a very important aspect of having this as the location of the Chillicothe-Ross Military Tribute Museum is the fact, some people say, well, couldn't you put it in another location? Couldn't you put a military tribute museum closer to the Historical Society or down in the armory in the park? But this is the location that needs to be at because it's next to the Chillicothe-Ross County Veterans Memorial Park. And so you hear in real estate the phrase location, location, location.
Yeah, definitely.
This location is the only true location that the Chillicothe-Ross Military Tribute Museum would make sense in and really be an attribute in.
And Chillicothe is a small town. It's very walkable. There's no problem walking or driving a few blocks between places.
And the thing too, when Bob is talking about location, 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 that is absolutely true with this facility. And then if you also look at it from the perspective of why not put it there, why not put it there, why not put it there, the thing is then what would be here? We have a historical building that we can save by putting a museum into it. We can't imagine any other type of business that would be better suited for this space, whether the building, if it were to be torn out, if somebody would try to renovate it, because of its proximity to the Veterans Memorial Park. There is nothing that would be as fitting for our veterans and for the history that this represents to Chillicothe.
So can people learn more about this anywhere online? Or?
We are developing a website, and we have somebody working on that. One of our veterans and board member, actually, Bob Barnhart, has been agreeable to doing that. So right now it's just a matter of talking to anybody on our board or Bob Leach or myself. If you have any questions, you can reach me at Hatfield13@gmail.com or at 740-703-9957.
And my contact information is robertleach@aol.com, or I can be reached through the Veterans Service Office.
And we'll probably see you at Memorial Day at a few local cemeteries.
Yes, indeed.
Well, and also with the thing that we have on April 15th.
Right. The upcoming funeral of Ward Thomas, the individual who went missing from the VA in 1972 and has finally been identified, and his funeral will be Green Lawn Cemetery, 1 o'clock on Monday, April 15th at the Columbarium.
Yes.
And I did a 3-part story on that, thanks to the information from you, as well as a few stories on the effort here with the Military Tribute Museum. So those are also places where people can learn more about this.
And I would like to say one other thing, not relative really to this, but kind of sorta. We really appreciate everything that you do, Kevin, because you do a lot for our veterans, and you care, and that speaks a lot, and we really appreciate it. Thank you.
Well, thank you. Well, Melody Lapzynski Hatfield and Bob Leach, thank you very much.